What's up guys, welcome back to Lexalexus. Today we're going to be carrying on with the championship, predicting week 3. And I'm telling you this, it's been so shockingly unpredictable as it normally should be. But I tell you what, week 2 really threw a spanner in the works. I was thinking I was kind of getting each team nailed on how they were going to do. But there's so many contrasts, I do think we're going to learn more about all of these teams in the next couple of game weeks or so. But you really cannot call it, and I'm really excited in that regard. We've got 12 more games to predict, a lot more early games to predict as well, including a game taking place tomorrow. So we will be making sure that we get all these predictions done. If you want to get involved in a Lexalexus Football Prediction League, please make sure you comment your predictions in the comments down below. If you guys like what you see, please smash the like button. Really does help the growth of this channel. Please do hit the subscribe button too, as we're trying to close in on 3K subscribers. That'd be amazing if we can get it. And please also share the channel too. All of that really helps. But without any further ado, let's start predicting week 3 for the 24-25 season. Game to predict is Sheffield Wednesday going up against Leeds United. Who knows what we're going to get from either one of these sides at the moment. So Sheffield Wednesday pulled in, I think, the performance of game week 1, beating Plymouth the way that they did, but then they put in one of the worst performances in the last week, losing, to Sunderland really heavily in the end, and looking quite defensively vulnerable, which really surprised me. It could be that Sunderland were very clinical, and they were, especially in set-piece situations. Sheffield Wednesday didn't even offer too much going forward, and defensively looked quite vulnerable, which does concern me. But it could be a scenario where Sheffield Wednesday just score a majority of their points at Hillsborough this season, and they're just going to have to try and pick up as many away points as possible if they want to try and get to the top half of the table. Leeds have started the season pretty slowly, albeit last season when they scored 90 points, they also started the season very slowly as well. But they've started with 2 draws, and it does feel like the squad is getting picked apart bit by bit in each week as it goes. We've known, very recently, Rutter has now left Leeds to join Brighton. There could be potentially more moves taking place before the transfer window ends. Leeds are going to be one of those clubs that will be delighted when transfer window ends. But I think they should be looking at this thinking, could they potentially get a little bit more? Because right now they are getting their squad picked apart a little bit, and I think it is disrupting the team particularly. But going into this game, this is tough. I can see Sheffield Wednesday improving. Typically under Danny Roll, they bounce back quite well to when they have a defeat. They did it a lot last season. This season, it's hard to say when time has passed, and obviously squads are slightly different now. But if we see anything like the Sheffield Wednesday we saw at Hillsborough against Plymouth, Leeds could have a really big game on their hands. But Leeds had a bit of a contrasting game, scoring plenty against Portsmouth, but then being involved in a 0-0 draw with West Brom Wales a lot more tighter. As a prediction, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I can't really edge either one of the teams to get a result at the moment. I think there's pros and cons for both going into this game, but I think they'll cancel each other out for a draw. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Next game to predict is Bristol City going up against Coventry. Now, this is not a repeat. I mean, this technically is a repeat because we saw both of these sides play against each other very recently. They both played in the Carabao Cup. It was Coventry that got the edge over Bristol City after their encounter. They're now going to have to play against each other in the league. Both Bristol City and Coventry picked up their first win of the season last week, since Coventry managed to get their first win also in a similarly high-scoring game against Oxford, managing to beat them by 3-2, and in fact both scoring very late on to get their winners as well. Are we going to see late drama here in this one? For me, I'm not so sure of that. I think their Carabao Cup game was very cagey. Coventry got the goal and ultimately really tried to hold on to the win, and they did so successfully. That might give them a bit of a psychological advantage going into this game. But as a prediction, I think the firepower I saw at Bristol City, if they can offer anything close to that against Millwall, I think could blow Coventry away. And I'm not too sure how I'm going to feel with Coventry with their away games. Their last away outing against Stoke was a very poor performance. If they can encourage me with a performance away from home here, then that will convince me that Coventry can certainly compete for the top part of the Championship again. But for me, I'm a bit apprehensive. And as a prediction, I'm going to go for a 2-1 victory to Bristol City. I think they're scoring plenty of goals at the moment. And certainly, I think this recent win over Millwall, I think it's going to be a really, really good catalyst just to allow them to potentially attack a little bit more freely. Let me know what you think of that in the comments down below. Speaking about Millwall, they're the next team we're going to predict. They're playing against Hull City, which I think is going to be an intriguing matchup here. So, Hull have been involved in 2 draws so far this season, a late equaliser against Bristol City, and also a relatively late equaliser against Plymouth. But you've got to admire Hull for being able to managing to overturn a comeback, which is really, really good on their part. But I've not been too convinced of their performances so far. Their squad is very, very small still. They still got a good week and a bit to try and get as many players in as possible. Because if not, then I struggle to see how this squad is going to sustain for the whole season. And they could certainly be a team that, you know, could maybe even fall a little bit below to what many of us are predicting. Millwall are still yet to pick up a point, but they've been involved in some intriguing matchups, really, and especially their last one where it ended 4-3 to Bristol City. I mean, at one point, I was so bloody impressed with Millwall, the way that they got their comebacks against Watford and, of course, Bristol City. But then in both occasions, they threw it away just from lack of concentration and not managing the game well, and they need to try and iron those really bad habits out now. Otherwise, those rude missed chances, you know, are really going to cost them. You know, if they do get relegated by 1 or 2 points, just one of those games where had they concentrated for 1 split second, it really could be the very difference. So standards are incredibly high as they normally are. A prediction here, I've learned now that we just seen goals now in Millwall. You know, I made a mistake predicting 0-0 between Millwall and Watford at the start of the season. I'm going to predict here a 2-2 draw, actually. I wouldn't be surprised if we get Estupiñán getting on the score sheet for Hull. I've been quite impressed with him at the start of Hull's campaign there. Millwall, I've been a little bit more impressed in spells. I've not really been impressed by a whole 90-minute performance from Millwall yet, hence no points on the board. But I think overall, we could actually see Millwall maybe looking the more likely to get a goal, but Hull would find a way to spoil Millwall's flow, as Watford and Bristol City have been successfully been able to do as well. So I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. Let me know what you think in the comments. We spoke about Plymouth. Well, they are the next team we're going to predict. They're playing against QPR. Now, both QPR and Plymouth picked up their first point of the season last weekend, and both have improved substantially from their first week horror show. You could have arguably said that QPR and Plymouth put in some of the worst performances for game week 1 compared to the other sides in the Championship. Great improvement. QPR involved with a thrilling 2-2 draw with Sheffield United, and I got to say, when Sheffield United commanded to that 2-0 lead, I thought it was going to be a pretty long season for QPR, and I was thinking maybe if I overestimated them a little bit. But what we saw there in their second half comeback is exactly what we've been waiting to see with this QPR side. And I'm actually now a little bit more optimistic now, and potentially this spell to get a draw against Sheffield United, who I think will be one of the favourites to go up from the Championship this year, might give them a little bit of a confidence boost going into this game against Plymouth. Now, Plymouth at home against Hull, much improved. They even took the lead in that game as well. We thought that potentially that may have been the only goal in that game, and potentially Plymouth could have actually had a repeat of their win against Hull, you know, from last year, but it wasn't meant to be in the end. And again, just potentially a little bit of game management concerns, potentially, causing the equaliser in the way that they did. I do fear for Plymouth that maybe their away form is not going to be strong enough, and they're going to have to really heavily rely on their home form to try and pick up enough points. And if they're going to concede goals like that at home, it's going to be even more difficult for them. And I need to see more away from home from them to convince me that Plymouth will be a side that stays up this season. QPR, I'm going to be intrigued to see if they can pick up where they left off against Sheffield United. I can really start to kick on this season now, because expectations, I think, have certainly raised since Marti Cifuentes got some really lovely stuff being played from this QPR side near the end of last season. As a prediction, I think we are going to see QPR starting to turn the screw and to really start getting their season underway. And I'm going to go for a 3-1 home victory to QPR. But obviously, Plymouth could even come back and they could potentially get something as well. You know, there's a lot of things could happen. There's been so many shocks so far in the opening 2 games. I wouldn't be surprised if this game could throw in a shock as well. But let me know what you think in the comments. Next game to predict is Blackburn going up against Oxford. So, Blackburn, I've got to say, have started the season relatively well, considering how many of us were thinking that they were going to have a really dismal season. I've been really impressed with Blackburn so far. I mean, to get that home win against Derby, all the pressure of opening the Championship season, you know, new season nerves didn't affect them there. And then they followed that with a 2-2 draw, albeit against a potentially struggling Norwich, which is going to require some adjustments before they kick on. You know, to still get a draw out of that is still really good. Ahashi, I gotta say, 2 goals in 2 games could potentially be a good forward option that maybe not quite fill in the shoes of Sammy Szmodics, because this is now the second league game with no Szmodics in Blackburn's squad. But I think now the goals could be shared across their forward line a little bit now, and I'm really pleased that they're stepping up. My fear was that they were going to have players that just could not step up and to do the work that Szmodics did, but right now, Blackburn are proving me that they can absolutely compete. Watch me jinx them now, because now they're playing an Oxford side, which I've got to say have started the season so much better than I expected, and dare I say, been a breath of fresh air going seeing them as well. They are averaging 2 goals a game at the moment, so they beat Norwich by 2-0, and they also scored 2 goals against Coventry. You know, had Will Volks not made that error, they could have got a point out of that. So Oxford are really impressing me, and I just wonder, can they sustain that underdogness within them throughout the season? Now, as a prediction here, I actually think we'll see some goals. I did see in that Coventry game that Oxford can be quite vulnerable defensively and can get their defence ripped open, but Coventry were also involved to a couple of threats from Oxford's side of things as well. So I think we will see goals from both sides, but I think as a prediction, I'm going to go for a 3-1 victory to Blackburn. Blackburn and Oxford, to be fair, are scoring plenty of goals at the moment. Both of them have scored 10 goals in between themselves in their opening 2 games. So if we don't get any goals in this game, you know, I'm just the ultimate jinx, because we've seen so many goals with these both sides. So I'm going 3-1 Blackburn. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. We now have a bit of a north versus south affair here. We've got Middlesbrough facing Portsmouth. Middlesbrough starting off with their season with a win and a defeat. They were really impressive against Swansea. Not holding a lot of the ball, but going forward, they were so dangerous. Derby is certainly the contrast to that. I mean, I think we've all saw the mistake at this point. It's one of the worst errors you could get from one of your key players, Isaiah Jones, as well. And since conceding that goal, Middlesbrough had so many chances to rectify that error, but Derby, to be fair to them, they managed to hold on with the win, and that actually could be a really important characteristic that Derby are going to have to use to try and survive the season. Portsmouth are going into this game with 2 draws at this moment of time. I mean, against 2 tough opponents in Leeds and Luton, you know, to get 2 points, I don't think they'd be too, you know, up in arms about that. I think John Mousinho's done well. This game doesn't really get any easier for Portsmouth, to be honest. I think it's going to be quite a tough one. So Portsmouth are going to have to do quite a fair bit of travelling going into this one. I mean, obviously, he didn't particularly face them when they faced Leeds, but I think this is certainly one of the furthest distances they're going to have to travel for the whole season there. I'm a little bit more confident with Middlesbrough's options, who can definitely chip in for a goal. But as a prediction, I see this one being really tight. And I'm going to go for a 1-0 victory to Middlesbrough. One thing I've seen with this Portsmouth back line, they work really bloody hard. So they're going to make this very, very difficult for Middlesbrough. But again, I just see very, very few chances going for both sides. But I think Middlesbrough might be the team that just cracks this one chance and will get them their 1 goal. So I'm going to go 1-0 Middlesbrough. Let me know what you think in the comments. This game to predict is Norwich versus Sheffield United. So, well, it's very fair to say that both of these sides have not had the perfect start of the season. Norwich especially, I'm not too sure what to make out with them at the moment. So, they've got John Forup here, you know, new manager. And at this moment of time, obviously it's going to take a little bit of time. I thought maybe against Blackburn they could get something. And they did have spells of really, really good stuff there. But then it's still the same defensive problems they've been having from last season. And that's one area I was hoping that they could iron out over this season. But they're going to have those same problems, aren't they? So they're really going to have to try and still create as much as they did going forward, as they almost conceded at the back as well. Sheffield United have picked up 4 points out of 6, which doesn't sound bad, but it is a recently relegated side who probably will have the expectation to go back up to the Premier League. Beating Preston in the opening day, very professional, calm performance. Against QPR, I don't know what happened, but they absolutely threw it away. They really, really did. They were so comfortable. And then suddenly, a quick spell from QPR changed the game completely. And I think it actually threw the Sheffield United players a little bit. So I'm going to be a little bit more eagle-eyed looking at both these sides. I'm expecting a bounce back from Sheffield United. Norwich, I expect just an improvement, full stop, because it's not been the start that they would have wanted. As a prediction, I'm a little bit more edging that Sheffield United are going to get the bounce back. That's a prediction. I'm going to go for a 2-1 away victory to Sheffield United. I think that's a little bit more likely here, but I wouldn't even be more surprised if Norwich pick up their first win of the season here as well and can now start kicking on as well. I think it's really difficult with a new manager because each manager just has a different adjusting period of time when things start to go their way. And it could be that it will take 3 league games for Hans Borup to now start getting results for Norwich. But I'm going to say it's going to take a little bit longer and Sheffield United will pick up all 3 points. But let me know what you think in the comments. Next game to predict is Preston versus Luton. Both of these sides have certainly not had a brilliant start to the season. Both of these sides are still looking for their first win of the season. Preston currently in the bottom 3 currently with 0 points and a whole lorry load of goals being conceded on their part as well. It has resulted in Rhino leaving and departing the club, which was certainly a big shock before game week 2 started to take place. But they've now got a new manager in Paul Heckingbottom. Now that I think is one of the more popular choices, I would say. I think certainly the big one that people wanted was David Moyes, but I think that was them shooting for the stars a little bit on that one, if I've got to be brutally honest. But I think Paul Heckingbottom is a safe championship bet. I think the challenge that he's going to have is that he's going to have a team with not as many resources as he's previously had in other clubs at this level. So I'm going to be intrigued to see how he gets on. Luton, they picked up their first point with that draw against Portsmouth, and actually I think a good point in the end for the fact that they lost Thomas Kaminski really early on to some ludicrousy to get 2 yellow cards in 2 minutes. But obviously they're going to have their second choice goalkeeper with Kaminski being suspended for this very game. But I did see a couple more positives going through, and I just think Luton are going to be a side that will just take a couple of games before they start to get their groove. Now, with Heckingbottom coming in, I think, again, there's going to be a brief adjusting period going into this Preston side, and I think it could take 1 or 2 games before things start to click. As a prediction, I still fear that Preston aren't scoring enough. I mean, it was a very poor showing against Swansea last time. I'm going to go for a 1-0 win to Luton. I don't see Luton blowing Preston away because their attacking players have not been as potent as I thought they would be at the moment, but I think they may squeak a win here and just get by 1 goal. Let me know what you think in the comments. So next game to predict is Stoke versus West Brom. I'm a little bit puzzled from both of these sides really at this moment. So Stoke started the season really, really well. Great win on their hands against Coventry. They followed that up against Watford and lose incredibly heavily in the end. So that's the really typical thing with Stoke. It's just the hope that kills you and you think that Stoke could kick on, and then suddenly it takes 1 game and then disaster unfolds. So I'm going to be intrigued here to see, can they pick themselves up from that really bad defeat against Watford last week? West Brom scored so many goals. I mean, Josh Marcher scored a majority of them, but they had so many chances against QPR and they took them. And against Leeds, understandably, I think they were tougher opposition, but at home, I expected them to potentially do a little bit more than what they did in the end. So both sides produced a little bit of an opposite to what they produced in game week 1 last week. So that's why I've been saying in my intro, this season's been so unpredictable because I don't know what version of these sides we're going to get. And I still think with transfer window open, I think that's just going to skew things and make things even more difficult to predict and follow. But right here, I have a little bit more confidence in West Brom getting some goals here. I just don't know what happened with Stoke. I think Stoke will be a little bit better. But personally, I think the options that West Brom have, I think are going to trounce Stoke. And I think they'll edge with a 2-0 away victory to West Brom. So I do think it will be comfortable-ish, but I think it's going to take a lot of patience, and it'll be eventually West Brom starting to put away within the final 20 minutes of the game, personally. So I'm going to go 2-0. Let me know what you think in the comments. Coming up next is Sunderland versus Burnley. Now, this is sort of a top-of-the-table clash from game week 3. It really is. Both Sunderland and Burnley starting the season with 2 wins in a row. The only other side to do that is Watford. So we're going to lose one of those 100% streaks here. But which team is going to lose it? This could give Watford a chance to go top of the table, by the way. But going into this, I was so impressed with Sunderland. I think whilst they didn't hold a lot of the ball and conceded many chances against Cardiff, they countered well, and the build-up to their goals was sublime. And then, what an impressive, confident performance against Sheffield Wednesday, where they really could have scored multiple of goals. 4, actually did them a bit of a disservice because they had so many chances, actually. So, Reggie Lebris is really proven to exceed my expectations right at the start. Now, obviously, that could change over time, but I've been so impressed with Sunderland so far. Burnley, though, they know how to score goals too. So within their first game, they were absolutely just cruising past Luton in the end to score, was it 4 goals, I think, past them in the end rather than 3. And then to score the amount of goals they did against Cardiff, 5-0 it was. I mean, they're scoring loads and loads and loads of goals. So I think Burnley are going to be a very difficult team to stop. A lot of us content creators knew they were going to be up there. I just didn't think, or I don't think any of us thought that Burnley were going to be as good as they were. And certainly, Burnley are kind of finding their level at the moment, and they need to try, and I'm thinking ahead, if they do get promoted, they need to try and find this way where they can actually compete in the league above, rather than really making everyone else the whipping boys in this league. As a prediction, this is going to be Burnley's toughest test, I think, still. It's 2 unbeaten sides, but I think it's going to be Burnley that will pick up the win here. And I'm going with a 3-1 away victory to Burnley. It'll be tight, but I think Burnley will eventually pull away. And I think as soon as Burnley potentially get the lead, I think it's just going to be a case of Sunderland trying to commit and Burnley just completely countering them in the end. So I'm going to go 3-1 Burnley. Let me know what you think in the comments. Next up is Watford versus Derby. I'm really intrigued of this one. So Watford, as I said previously to my previous prediction, they're the only other side with Sunderland and Burnley who have still picked up 2 wins out of 2. I would not have predicted those 3 teams to still be the 2 unbeaten sides going into this weekend, but here we are. And Watford, I think it's just been a side which I think so many people assumed, and I was probably quite lazy for assuming so, that they ended the season pretty poorly, not picking up enough wins, and they were going to really struggle. But clearly the preparation into this season has been spot on for Watford at this moment. Now, obviously, as I said already, things can change. And I'm not going to get too carried away with Watford starting so well. But the performances are churning in, the amount of goals they're managing to find, they're averaging 3 goals a game at the moment. The stats say that Watford are doing really, really well at the moment. Derby picked up their first win as a newly promoted side. It's only Portsmouth now who are still looking for their first win as a newly promoted side now. They've now joined Oxford in that regard there. Now, I won't lie, performance-wise, certainly a little bit fortunate to pick up the win when they did. It was certainly from a mistake. Caden Jackson, I'm really pleased for him to get his goal in this level. But certainly, if they're going to have games like this, they're certainly going to have to try and limit the amount of chances that they were conceding. I think they were quite lucky that Middlesbrough had a bit of an off day, but we should give them credit. They defended really, really well here. But this Watford side, who are scoring so many goals in the moment, I think I can't offer anything less than a Watford win in the moment. Now, this would be so typical if Derby snatch a 1-0 away win at this point. But I'm going to go for a 2-0 victory to Watford. I'm a little bit more confident there. Actually, you know, not only scoring loads, but we saw in that last game, keeping that clean sheet against Stoke, is that they're defending well as well and keeping a clean sheet. And I think they'll do the same here. Let me know what you think in the comments. And we end this weekend with a South Wales derby of Swansea versus Cardiff. Now, one thing I would say that's in common with both of these sides, I think they've both been performing quite well, but not necessarily getting the amount of points that they deserved. Now, Swansea managed to get the result they deserved because I think they played quite well against Middlesbrough in holding the ball. And in terms of creating chances, they just had to wait until an opening came in, and they really attacked Middlesbrough and tested them in the second half of their opening game. In their second game against Preston, they were very, very confident. 3-0 winners, very comfortable, looked to threat each time going forward. So finally, I felt Swansea were actually being rewarded with something there. Now, Cardiff, I actually think have been performing quite well, but just have not been getting any points. So obviously, their first game against Sunderland, I think is the major one for me. The fact that they didn't get any points there, you know, was very, very harsh, and they didn't get a goal. Burnley, I think, was just going to be a really tough challenge for them. They made it close for the majority of it, but then Burnley started pulling away as well. So we could see a situation there where Cardiff could find themselves bottom of the table. In fact, they do find themselves bottom of the table at the moment. They're only behind Preston because of the amount of goals that they've conceded. But it is Preston and Cardiff, the two sides, and, you know, I would say Millwall as well. Three sides who have not picked up any points so far this season. So both will be hoping to pick up their first point this weekend. But as a prediction, it's really hard to say. I'm a little bit, I don't know, I feel like I'm a little bit more confident with Swansea at this moment of time. But despite that, it's a South Wales derby, and it's typically quite unpredictable with a South Wales derby at this moment. I think Cardiff are certainly going to bring a lot of fight, and knowing that they've got a lot to play for still. Swansea, I think, will be more of a team on the ball. It's just going to be a question, can Cardiff counter that? And I think they could. As a prediction, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I've not predicted too many draws this weekend, but I think this could be a classic one where we see one team hold on to the ball, but then they're suddenly going to have to undo all of that to then try and get themselves a goal to equalise it as well. So I'm going to go for a draw. Let me know what you think in the comments. So guys, that wraps it up for my championship score predictions for week 3. As you see here, please make sure you comment your score predictions in the comments if you guys want to score so many more points in the Lexalexus Football Prediction League. I think that's everything that I need to say. So thank you guys so much for watching. As you see here, please do like, subscribe and share if you can. It really, really does help the growth of this channel. And each comment and view and like, you know, really, really does help the growth of this channel. And thank you guys for being such an amazing community as always. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are legendary if you saw any of this video. And as always, I'll see you guys soon. Good luck with your predictions, everyone, and take care.